A new report returns focus to the Flint water crisis and turns a harsh light on former Governor Snyder. In this virus crisis, what does it mean that people are dying alone and then the bereaved grieve alone? And a rare treat, a musical love letter from Jeff Daniels to his hero, Al Kaline. Today is Sunday, April 19, 2020, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. Great to have you with us. We have a very busy and somewhat eclectic program ahead. I have wondered for weeks now about the fact that we have so many people right now dying alone. Their loved ones really can't be there to comfort them or even to say goodbye. And then for the survivors, no way to really have the funerals that we've come to know as part of our sense of closure. And the best person I can think of to talk about that is Thomas Lynch, the Michigan undertaker, author, and poet, and he's going to join us coming up. Also this morning, a real treat, I think. The day the great Al Kaline died, Jeff Daniels sat down with his guitar and penned a lovely tribute to his boyhood hero, and you're going to hear that coming up too. But up first, Vice News releases a new report on the Flint water crisis that claims Governor Snyder knew about Flint's toxic water and lied about it. We'll talk with one of the Vice reporters behind the story up first today on Flashpoint. Well, while we're consumed with this COVID-19 crisis, it wasn't so long ago that the Flint water crisis was making thousands of Michiganders sick. A new Vice News investigation raises major questions about the attempts to silence, pay off, and punish the people and leaders of Flint and the role former Governor Rick Snyder played in all of it. Let's talk about it with one of the reporters on the piece. Jordan Chariton joins us. Jordan, it is a very exhaustive, lengthy piece of reporting. We'll never get to everything that you've got in there, but let's start with some of the headlines, including your reporting that Governor Snyder was warned about the dangers of switching to the Flint River and also knew about the Legionnaires cases long before he testified he did in both instances.
Yeah, our reporting learned that Governor Snyder was actually warned by the director of the state environmental department as well as the state treasurer over a year before the water switch. So this is 2013, that using the Flint River as a water source could have adverse bacterial growth as well as carcinogens to public health. He was warned about that. You know, obviously the switch went on anyway. We also learned that in October 2014, so, you know, still early in the water crisis, 6 months after the switch, that is when he first learned of the Legionella outbreak in Flint. And this was a couple of weeks before his reelection, actually, for governor, at a time when some reporting indicates he was considering a run for president. So it was definitely much earlier that he testified to Congress.
Yes, that was the key point I was going to mention. This was testimony to Congress. So not telling the truth, of course, comes with federal consequences.
Yes, and according to former Flint Mayor Karen Weaver, who went on the record with us, Governor Snyder at the inauguration for current Governor Whitmer had asked Flint Mayor Weaver at the time if she could ask Congressman Elijah Cummings, while he was still alive, to basically back off, to not continue investigating him, because Chairman Cummings was the incoming chairman of the Congressional Oversight Committee and had already publicly said that he was going to try and bring Governor Snyder back in to answer additional questions. So the governor was clearly concerned about being investigated further.
You also report that the governor leaned on Mayor Weaver to tell Flint residents that they could drink the water before it was safe to do so.
Yes, according to Mayor Weaver and several other sources who, you know, worked with her and are familiar with the back and forth between the two, pretty much as soon as Mayor Weaver became mayor, there was a full court press by Governor Snyder, his top officials, to get her to declare the water was improving, to get her to declare the water in the schools in particular were safe, to declare that, Rich Baird, the governor's top advisor, tried to get her to say you don't have to use a filter anymore. And when Mayor Weaver would not do that, all of a sudden funding promises from Lansing dried up and was not made available.
And speaking of leaning on people, you also report that one of the governor's top advisors, Rich Baird, went to some of the louder complainers, I guess we'll call them, the louder victims of the water crisis in Flint, and basically offered to pay them off to be quiet, whether it was through health care or fixing up their house.
Yeah, this was really stunning. Rich Baird, who in many Flint residents I spoke to had represented himself as representing the governor. I'm here representing Governor Snyder, offered one family medical treatment for a sick resident, Adam Murphy, who had gotten sick like thousands of other residents. Adam Murphy had been really loud and kind of popped off at a town hall, got media attention, and a couple weeks later, Rich Baird's in his living room offering this treatment, but saying you can't go to the media. Do not talk about this to anyone else. Kind of represented it as, if it works for you, this treatment, we'll make it available to the rest of the Flint residents. That didn't happen. Other residents, Rich Baird was trying to offer them special Medicaid expansion, but again, not for the rest of Flint. Some residents took the deal, not even thinking they were being paid off, really believing that this was going to be made available to the rest of Flint, and other residents told Rich Baird, where he could shove it.
The long paper trail that you follow here also, I think, kind of provides a counter look at this from the typical way that I think most people have come to understand what happened in Flint, was that it was going to be cheaper to move them to the Flint water system, the Flint River, rather than stay with the Detroit water system. I think what you've found is that it was the opposite. It was going to be cheaper eventually to stay with Detroit, but that there was, I guess for lack of a better word, graft involved in trying to move to the new water system they were trying to create in mid-Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, there has been reporting in the past that Governor Snyder definitely wanted to regionalize the water system. Some would say privatize the water system. And the best way to do that was to break up Detroit Water's stranglehold over water. Flint was Detroit's biggest customer. So if you get Flint off of Detroit's water source, what happened was Detroit Water was bankrupted. The part that we learned was that the KWA pipeline, which was billed as, this alternative for Flint that would save it money, actually Treasurer Dillon at the time had rejected that in the beginning because Flint was basically broke. They didn't have money to join a new water pipeline or become a borrower. Flint issued bonds to join that pipeline. Yeah. So it ended up being much more expensive for Flint to join the KWA. And a lot of banks made a lot of money, bondholders like Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, a lot of wealthy investors, contractors. But, the people of Flint were kind of left footing the bill for this.
Follow the money always remains the admonition. I want to talk now about then where this all goes from here. We've had quite a few people who've been charged and have pleaded in this case. However, the big kahunas still remain, and that was partly because when Dana Nessel became the new AG, as we all remember, she kind of stopped the case in its tracks that had been launched under her predecessor. And now she's saying that she's reminding people that they're not necessarily looking at a statute of limitations here coming up at the end of this month, as some have believed. But where do you think all of this now goes?
Yeah, I think a major headline also of our story is we found out that the previous prosecution team was building a case against Governor Snyder. They had secretly subpoenaed Governor Snyder's chief of staff, Dennis Muchmore, Treasurer Andy Dillon, Rich Baird, his top advisor. This was not known that they were brought in for confidential subpoenas and interviews, which we obtained. So I would say, listen, I can't get into the Attorney General's head, but she came in and quickly kind of cleaned house, fired the prosecutors, fired investigators with former Special Prosecutor Flood's team, and dropped a lot of charges that, to a lot of Flint residents, they didn't understand because a judge had decided to send Nick Lyon and Eden Wells to face a jury trial. So maybe they will file charges. I don't know. But according to two state lawmakers, the statute of limitations to press charges for misconduct in office, which is a felony, is 6 years, which would be April 25th. So
fascinating to see where it all goes from here. Jordan, it is fascinating reporting. I appreciate the drill down this morning. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much for covering.
Yeah, you bet. When we come back, suspended grief. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.